Okay, so the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I think a lot of people get toxic masculinity confused with just demonizing all masculine traits. So I want to provide a definition and kind of an alternative definition, which says the same thing basically for toxic masculinity, which is acting on toxic or unhealthy behaviors to prove or display masculinity, or in an alternative definition is behaviors or traits that are inherently masculine used in a toxic, unhealthy, or negative way. And I'll give some examples. So something like overaggression. So starting unnecessary fights, or an extreme example would be like domestic violence, unhealthy sexual behaviors like inappropriate hypersexuality or sexual acts, habitual cheating, and even homophobia. Um, Possessiveness over their partners, so extreme jealousy, tracking their partner's location, not allowing their partner to see friends without him attending, and a lack of emotional intelligence is another example. So if like a guy is worried about being seen as feminine, so he's kind of lacking in the emotional intelligence department, that's like another example. And then even some excessive or obsessive behaviors like an obsession with money or sex to an unhealthy degree could be an example of toxic masculinity. But remember, so in order for these behaviors to be in the toxic masculinity category, they need to be done by a man specifically because he believes that this behavior is connected to his manhood in some way. So, like a man who cheats on his girlfriend, maybe because he was young and in love with some girl and didn't know what to do, isn't necessarily toxic masculinity. Whereas a guy who cheats on his girlfriends because he thinks that's just something normal for men to do, that would be toxic masculinity. Or like, sorry, okay. I hate reading. I hate the intros. Okay.
It's okay.
Gonna take a breath. Okay. So a guy who gets into like a few fights throughout his lifetime, that's not necessarily toxic masculinity, but if he is doing it because if he's just like unnecessarily starting fights to prove his manhood, that would be a example of toxic masculinity. Um, so sorry, now I lost. Okay, so yeah, it's again acting on toxic or unhealthy behavior to prove or display masculinity. There are plenty of non-toxic, completely healthy and natural masculine behaviors. What matters is how they are being used. I also believe in toxic femininity. There are plenty of feminine behaviors that women use in toxic or unhealthy ways, but society has yet to really use the term, and I personally would like to see this talked about more, but that's kind of a different discussion. So I just want to make it clear that the term toxic masculinity is not to demonize masculine traits. It is a way to describe how some men abuse certain masculine traits, which are sometimes perpetuated in our society and normalized. And normalizing toxic masculinity actually hurts men. So when we normalize toxic masculine traits or behavior in society and make excuses like boys will be boys or use their gender to excuse these negative behaviors, this actually hurts men. Rather, we should be teaching boys how to channel their masculine traits into healthy, positive, appropriate, and useful ways. But when we start to normalize toxic masculinity and perpetuate the idea that these bad behaviors are solely attributed to their manhood, I see this as an insult to men. Like, men are so primal, they can't help themselves, they have no self-control, etc., which is obviously not true. So, and then lastly, when I say toxic in this context, I'm using it to describe something that is detrimental, damaging, or hurtful to oneself or others. So why would we normalize behavior or traits that set men back and claim it's normal due to their gender, rather than teaching them all the positive traits about masculinity and how many good things it can be used for? Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, Ghosty. Ryan, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think that was fantastically well said. I agree with pretty much everything there. Also, it's good to see everybody.
Stop saying Ryan.
What?
Nothing. I was saying it's good to see you, Ryan. I got you tooth, by the way.
Oh, stop
Thanks,
it.
buddy.
It's nobody's statement.
Good evening. We often find profound truths in unexpected places. Consider Shrek, the grumpy, isolated ogre living in his swamp. On the surface, it's a fairy tale parody, but look closer, and we see a narrative that resonates deeply with the struggles many men face concerning isolation, self-perception, and the fundamental need for connection. Shrek begins his story deliberately alone, believing, as he says, people judge me before they even know me. That's why I'm better off alone. He builds walls, embraces solitude, a defense mechanism against anticipated rejection. This mirrors a pattern recognized in research. Societal pressures often push men towards a strong and silent ideal, leading them to suppress vulnerability, avoid seeking help, and sometimes preferring isolation over the risk of judgment. This isn't just a fairy tale trope. It reflects a documented rise in male loneliness, sometimes called a silent epidemic, linked to poor mental health outcomes and also suicidal ideations. Shrek, like many men, has layers. He's like an onion, complex beneath his gruff exterior, hiding pain and a longing to be truly seen. This brings us to our first core point, grounded in observation and research. Certain specific interpretations and rigid applications of masculine norms, like the pressure for absolute emotional stoicism, the avoidance of vulnerability, or equating strength solely with toughness, demonstrably lead to negative consequences. These consequences include harm to oneself, manifesting as isolation, anxiety, depression, and reluctance to seek help. They include harm to others through strained relationships, difficulty connecting, or even aggression born from unprocessed pain. And they hinder the well-being of our communities. Shrek's initial misery, his pushing away of Donkey's persistent friendship, his very belief that he must be alone, these illustrate the harmful outcomes of these specific rigid patterns. Now here's our crucial point of common ground, our second premise. None of us desire these negative outcomes. Whether we prioritize secular values or Christian values, we can still unite around essential values like well-being, empathy, love, stewardship, and respect for human dignity. And building on that shared foundation, we can also find ourselves sharing a fundamental rejection of unnecessary harm, isolation, disrespect, and the lack of self-control that fuels destructive behavior. Shrek himself, after pushing everyone away following the misunderstanding with Fiona, realizes he's utterly miserable. His own experience tells him that isolation born from fear and rigidity is undesirable. We, as observers, root for him not to stay alone, but to connect. We intrinsically value connection, healthy relationships, and individual flourishing. Therefore, our conclusion, and the core of my position tonight, is this. When we use the term toxic masculinity, we're not condemning masculinity itself, nor are we attacking men. Instead, we're using a specific term to identify those particular harmful distortions and rigid applications of masculine norms that produce the negative consequences we all agree are undesirable. It's a diagnostic label for patterns, like Shrek's initial fear-driven isolation and emotional suppression, patterns that demonstrably cause harm. Addressing these specific distortions, differentiating healthy assertiveness from harmful domination, distinguishing emotional resilience from crippling emotional suppression, separating responsible protection from possessive control, is not about weakening men. It's about fostering healthier individuals capable of genuine connection, like Shrek eventually finds with Donkey and Fiona. It's about building stronger families and communities, goals aligned across diverse ethical frameworks. Shrek's journey wasn't about becoming less of an ogre. It was about shedding the toxic patterns born of fear and societal judgment to embrace authentic connection and self-acceptance, ultimately finding happiness not in solitude, but in community. Our goal tonight should be similar, to identify these harmful patterns constructively, drawing on shared values so we can explore pathways towards healthier expressions of masculinity that benefit everyone.
I don't really have a super long opening statement. I wrote a couple of things last minute because I was working all day, but I will read it out loud, and then I'll yield the rest of my time over to Andrew. So today I stand against the idea of toxic masculinity, not because I deny the existence of harmful behaviors in our society, but because I believe that the term itself is misleading, divisive, and counterproductive. The term toxic masculinity unfairly paints masculinity as inherently dangerous, when in reality, traits like strength, leadership, and stoicism can be powerful forces for good, rather than targeting specific harmful behaviors like violence or emotional repression. The term broadly attaches blame, stigmatizes boys and men who are simply trying to understand who they are in this confusing world. Let's be clear. Let's be clear. Bad behavior is bad behavior, no matter who exhibits it. But by labeling it as masculine, we shut down meaningful conversation and alienate the very people we should be empowering. Masculinity is not the enemy. Oversimplifying labels are. And that's all I have on that. But I will say in short, the idea of men being inherently toxic, I will always stand against that, just because I, by myself, am a man. And I don't believe that I am a toxic person, nor do I believe that many of the other people that surround us in this world are toxic. I simply think we are who we are. We exist in this broad spectrum that a lot of people don't seem to understand, nor take the time to really properly understand us. And I'm hoping that tonight we are able to have a pretty good conversation here and see what this is all really about. So with that, I yield the rest of my time to Andrew.
Thank you, Neo. Andrew, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Toxic masculinity is an 80s term from a bunch of crazy ass spiritualists who worked it into the public consciousness. Later, the term was proliferated by a bunch of feminists and psychologists, but ultimately, for the sake of time, let me reduce its meaning. Toxic masculinity just means behavior in men which lacks some perception of appropriate or reasonable by fucking women. That's it. Generally, this is based around empathy and not having enough empathy to placate whatever idiot harpy is upset with their behavior. That's it. That's all it is. We could easily say toxic femininity, which would be the traits and characteristics of women which have made their behavior suboptimal from a man's perspective, would be saying the same thing in reverse. Let me introduce you to a different term which fits better: social carnage. When women and men who act like women are referring and talking about toxic masculinity, they're actually referring to this term, social carnage. Men engage in social carnage as part of not only masculinity, but as a part of what they actually are based on physiology. Examples of, quote, toxic masculinity, which is actually social carnage, would be things like the open palm slap to a woman's rear they were in a relationship with, causing her some kind of physical pain for the man's own personal amusement. Getting your first BB gun and shooting indiscriminately every bird you can find because it's really fucking fun. Creating a diabolical trap for an evil raccoon or squirrel that has been feeding on your birdseed dispenser, where said diabolical trap has a maze of corridors filled with additional ways for the critter to die horribly, which they must evade, only to, in the end, find out it was never going to escape, but you had a conibear trap laid there too, and it was always going to slam shut, crushing the little bastard's skull. Then you jump out and you do the ha ha ha, you little fucker dance, which goes like this: ha ha ha, you little fucker, I fucking killed you, ha 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 ha. Now, while you know some woman somewhere is looking on disapprovingly, social carnage includes hazing, moderate bullying, shit talking, being reasonably mean, being somewhat churlish. Okay, includes all those things. Disagreeable, laughing occasionally at the misfortunes of horrible people, and sometimes laughing at the misfortunes of your own friends, causing people a bit of distress for your own personal amusement. While driving down the road, swerving slightly for the raccoon, which everybody knows is 10 points, while your wife calls you a monster and you laugh at her. That, my friends, is social carnage. And we fucking need it real bad. Understand, men are a necessary component in society, specifically because they can handle violence without becoming emotionally invested. They can even look at killing as just a job and turn it on and off. Sometimes it will. This behavior assists men in finding the limits of what is socially acceptable among other men, so we understand how to properly execute our roles as protectors, providers, resource gatherers, and processors. I'll never forget my first time in a kill plant listening to pigs screaming at the top of their lungs while being summarily dispatched by a guy who was talking about how he can't wait to take his son out for a football game this weekend. The casual way he went about slaughtering the food, which would later fill society's belly, while at the same time only thinking about the future of his family, should put this in perspective for you. Men are uniquely equipped for that role, and women aren't. They don't understand the complexity of how men perceive empathy and the social duties we have, instead finding our ability to turn off our empathy, including towards them for the betterment of society and others, as being, quote, toxic. It isn't toxic. It is necessary social carnage, of which women and children are the primary beneficiaries. And women should honestly just shut their fucking mouths about it because they clearly don't understand it, and that's fine. You don't need to understand it. You just need to get out of the way. Behaviors or traits which are masculine used in an unhealthy way. Okay, you can just say that that's definitionally true about any term that you come up with and call it whatever you want. It's a proprietary, you're making up a proprietary term. So here, I'll say toxic masculinity is anybody named Ghosty. Therefore, you are now toxically masculine for my proprietary definition. It's a stupid argument. They say homophobia. Homophobia is toxic masculinity. According to who? According to who? You? Who makes you the fucking authority on what is toxic masculinity? Nobody. That's who. And by the way, homophobia is often fucking based and is part of in-group preference. It is part of the things which are necessary for the good conditioning of a social society. They bring on lack of emotional intelligence. Doesn't mean fucking anything. Emotional intelligence is stupid. It means nothing. What do? Do we get together with a bunch of women and ask them if they feel heard? Is that what emotional intelligence is? Do we come up with a little testy test where we have how do you measure that? How do I measure empathy? What is the unit of measurement that I would use for this? They're just trying to make the term toxic masculinity definitionally true. Progressives do this all the time. I'm going to completely dismantle it. Also, Ryan, Shrek didn't do anything wrong. A bunch of feminized fairy tale creatures tried to steal his shit, and he still went on to fulfill his great duty. What was wrong with Shrek wanting to be alone? And also, you failed to point out that his broad lied to him about being cursed so that Shrek would have to marry a monster, Ryan. You didn't point that out, Ryan. That was a very important plot point, which you omitted, which proved that there was no such thing as toxic masculinity in Shrek. It was a diabolical plot by a bunch of feminized fairy tale creatures, along with a heartless woman who was willing to lie to get her way in a marriage that she desired for her own personal benefit. With that, I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you so much kindly. And don't forget, I believe everybody here is dual streaming. If you can like, subscribe, and share on any of their ends, I believe the mods will be dropping their channels in the chat throughout the evening. We will go into the debate. We will read and respond to super chats after closing statements, and then we will go into open panel dumpster fire. Outside of that, I leave the floor to all of you. It is open.
If I can just real quick, and I'm going to yield the floor to Ghosty after this, but I just want to address the Shrek criticisms. It's funny that you accuse me of leaving out core details about the story, but you don't even mention Lord Farquaad either, the villain of the movie. And you accuse Fiona of lying to Shrek to marry him, which is not at all what happened in that movie.
Do you know why, though? Hang on, I actually have a good reason for this.
She was revealed to be an ogre well before Shrek and her actually really connected in a romantic way.
Okay, hang on, Ryan.
Was going off to marry Farquaad still after that point. So,
yeah,
and she didn't even want to go marry Farquaad. So she actually wasn't using her lies about being an ogre to get married. She actually didn't want to go marry Farquaad for most of the movie.
But she did. So here's what actually happened. Your foolish revisionist history. The entire time, Pixar pointed out that Lord Farquaad was short. They were making fun. Movie, by the way. They were making fun of Farquaad the entire time for being a tiny man, right, with great ambitions. They were clowning on him the entire time. What did they do to criticize Fiona for the fact that she basically was trying to hide the fact that she was an ogre to advance her own political agenda? Nothing. In fact, they made her out to be some sort of hero, justified all of her actions while making, of course, the hero of the story, in this case, Lord Farquaad, who wanted to get rid of a bunch of nutcases and lunatics and people who could cast witchcraft spells in his kingdom out. They made him out to be a villain, called him short, did horrible things, right? In order to besmirch the fine name of this man, while at the same time trying to cover Fiona for her evil deeds of trying to hide the fact that she was an ogre, right? And was only using this guy to get married to him to break her own curse. You didn't even point that out once, Ryan. Not once.
I don't know. I thought the Shrek example was a pretty good analogy, but we could go into that whole movie maybe, but yeah.
By the way, that was a Reddit thread. You got that? I was reading the Reddit thread.
Did it really? I used AI to
Ryan. Yeah, it came from a Reddit thread. You should just Google it. It's the first thing that pops up. Yeah,
that's
it's
fine.
A Reddit thread about. It's called Shrek Deconstructing Toxic Masculinity.
Cool. Someone drew the analogy before I thought to ask
from Redditors, Ryan.
But it doesn't matter. Yeah, go Steve.
Like
please.
The best part of that movie is Donkey, and Donkey is like bringing Shrek out of those like toxic traits that he had, where he was pushing everybody away. Again, lack of emotional intelligence.
Was that? Okay, so let's get into these.
So he wouldn't live alone. He could experience love.
What's wrong with him living alone?
Well, we are social creatures. Like, it's
he's
not
an
healthy
ogre
to live by yourself.
He's an ogre.
Okay, this is like an analogy, though, right?
Yeah, but I mean, within the confines into the marriage, like
no, within the confines.
Want that at the end?
Do you think
within
Shrek
the confines?
Are
you going to let me answer a question? You're just going to ask him.
I mean, I guess, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, in the analogy here, this is really simple, right? What is wrong with a guy wanting to be stoic and living alone? What's wrong with that?
Well, for the movie, like Shrek was way happier after he had like a community and marriage and kids and friends.
Yeah,
and
that's
stuff,
called
right?
plot convenience.
So don't you think humans are kind of like meant to procreate and have relationships and stuff like that?
Yeah, except
So
for the ones who want to be left alone and live by themselves.
sure, and I guess that's fine, but
What's toxic about it? It's my question.
it's not.
Well, I would say the thing that
Go
was
ahead,
supporting the toxic perspective of masculinity was like he'd really internalized the rejection that he'd experienced from society. Again, I brought up the quote about him saying, I'm an awful ogre, I'm an ugly ogre, like wanted everyone to run away scared from him, you know. And he was kind of engaging with this in a harmful way, where he was pushing anyone who could have connected with him away, like Donkey, for example, who he eventually becomes great friends with after Donkey expresses
He's
a
never
very
friends with
accepting,
Donkey.
positive example of masculinity
No.
to him through friendship, which I think
No.
all of us value friendship.
They're not friends. He doesn't even like him. He never likes him.
What?
He never even likes him through the second movie. He just tolerates him. That's one. And then
I
secondly,
disagree.
let's point out something that's pretty simple here, right? Oh, so people were trying to hunt down this guy and kill him. So he decided that he wanted to live alone and he didn't like people very much. That's actually not toxic. That would be healthy. That would be a
No,
healthy
he had a
thing to
bunch of
do.
people who were living in his swamp who were, I mean, they were kind of annoying, I guess you could
You
say.
mean people
But
who were trying to steal his property?
well, I think
Sort of.
the whole point is
Farquaad was
that
trying to steal his property.
Well, okay. By putting people on his property who were then living there and he wanted them off his property. Yeah.
Yeah, displacing them.
Yeah, I think I would be pretty annoyed if I just woke up tomorrow, don't you, Ryan, and there was 25 people on your property?
No doubt, yeah. Especially
Yeah,
if
yeah.
some
Would it
that's
be
short
fair.
asshole
would it
over
be
there pushing
toxic of
them.
you to want them to leave so that, you could live by yourself if you wanted to?
Not necessarily, but
No,
if it
no.
was if I used that my rejection of community based on my own internalized trauma from my past of being rejected by that society to avoid connection with those people or with anybody, then that might be toxic.
What
right?
if you just don't want what if you don't want connection with people? That's still not toxic. You haven't actually shown me how that's
It
toxic.
doesn't.
You just assert that it is. So like let's say you're traumatized and don't want
Do you
anything
think
to
that
do
men
with a
commit
community.
suicide more than women?
Yeah, but you know why? It's because they're better at
Why?
it. They actually do it. They actually attempt it at the same rates. Look it up. They attempted at the same
No,
rates.
women
It's just
actually
that
attempt higher. I know what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah, it's just that men use pistols, and so their success rate is much higher because they
So
actually
we
know
have
how to use them.
mental health crisis
If
with
women
men,
actually
no?
needed,
Or do you
well,
disagree?
no, actually, women suffer from mental health problems at exorbitant amounts in comparison to men. It's not even in the same universe. It's much higher for women. Much higher for
Are
women.
they
Yeah, I don't,
are
I
they
don't know
more
about
likely
that,
to
but
seek help or not?
Women, sure.
so the whole point is that it's not it's not like a man who lives by himself because he has PTSD or something. He doesn't want to be around somebody. That's not necessarily like toxic to society. But if you want to live like a healthy life, I don't think anybody wants to like it's not a good idea to have people in isolation. That's just not healthy for humans in
Unless they
general.
want to be in isolation.
But if you're doing that out of like trauma, like you're traumatized and you have PTSD, you don't want to be around people, that means you're just living in a mentally unhealthy state. So again,
Do you know that there are men, for instance, who have to necessarily brave the brutals of warfare? And when they do, right, oftentimes there is no treatment. You can talk about treatment all you want, but you can't actually treat them. It doesn't matter if you give them pills, doesn't matter how much you talk to them, doesn't matter how much you have them in groups. And so a lot of those men end up isolating themselves, right? Or they isolate themselves and their families both, right? And they kind of move away from general society and this type of thing because they actually know that they're quite dangerous. And so they isolate themselves from the group. This is very common. Men have been doing this, by the way, for thousands of years. You can go back and look at the
Mhm.
literature on this for men who come back from war and isolate themselves for just this reason, because they know that they have impulse control issues, which came from warfare, things like this. Is that toxic?
So I have a lot of military family and a lot of people who have served overseas in various extents, and it seems like to me, at least from my perspective, that they seem to find a lot of comfort in like a fraternity with others who served alongside them. Right, that community, that sense of community, is very, very important to them. And without that,
You're not
I think they
answering
would
to
have
my
a lot more
criticism.
issues. Yeah.
I agree with you that there are
Oh,
groups
cool. So we
and
agree.
there are things stop and there are things about PTSD and things like this, which it seems to be helpful to have group support and things like this for some people, but for other people, it does nothing for them. Nothing, because psychology is the study of the mind, not the study of the fucking brain. It's the study of the mind. It's a theoretical, philosophical science. It's not a hard science. It's a soft science. It's made up shit. It's
Well,
group
the distinction
counseling.
between soft and hard science isn't actually, you're not standing on very solid ground there. They use the scientific method in the quote unquote soft sciences to collect data.
Yeah, that's true, Ryan. Interestingly, it's interesting that you say that. Have you ever heard of a thing called the replication crisis?
I'm aware.
Yeah, and what two fields suffer the most in the replication crisis in science?
Presumably psychology and I'm not sure what the other, sociology.
Sociology, yeah, sociology and psychology. Why is that? I thought they were employing the scientific
it doesn't really matter.
method
doesn't mean you
based
can
on
just
data.
dismiss. That doesn't mean you can just dismiss the entire field, right?
Well, I don't know, Ryan. If you had a 70% failure rate, right? If I were to offer you, I don't know, a whole thing of M&Ms and told you only 70% of them were poison, would you eat any?
Yeah, but that's not what we're doing. We're looking at we're looking at specific, like if we look at specific studies, we're looking at data that was collected, seeing the process of how that data was collected and analyzing that specifically. We're not,
the problem is
necessarily
when they
making
try to
predictions,
replicate that data, Ryan, when they try to replicate it, they can't replicate it. Even with the same control groups and the same scientists, they can't replicate it. That's what the replication crisis is. And they tried. They've tried to go through with. They've tried to go through with meta-analysis to try to solve this. They haven't solved it, and it's not even really getting better, Ryan, because it's not a real science. Sociology and psychology, not real sciences. Yes, it's true that you can use forms of the scientific method to collect data for fucking anything on planet Earth, by the way, which would include this field. That doesn't mean that you're employing the scientific process, and here's why. What's the first step in the scientific method, Ryan?
You tell me.
What's the first step?
I don't know. I don't know any science.
Well, okay. What's the scientific method? Can you tell me that? Can you just tell me the scientific method?
We're not here to talk about the scientific method, are we?
Can you tell me the scientific method or not, Ryan?
No, I'm not going to entertain it.
No? You can't tell me the scientific. So you're going to tell me about science. You can't. Okay. Well, the first step is observation. Do you agree with that?
Sure. So are we going to walk through the scientific method, or are we going to talk about the fact that initially you just said that the thing that we were identifying was true? It's just redefined. You just redefined it as social carnage. So you accepted from the get-go.
No. I think that you redefined
the thing that people are identifying
redefined social
as toxic
carnage.
masculinity. You agreed right out the gate.
Which people? Which people?
Well, I have a point to make.
Wait, hang on, Ryan. Which people?
No, I yield my time.
No, Ryan, answer my question. Which people?
I don't have to do that.
I think you're just making a fallacious argument.
Andrew, please calm down, Andrew.
I think you're just making an argument ad populum.
Okay, so I kind of want to tie this back to where.
Yeah, go ahead, Ghosty.
So, the point is, you're saying that these men, and I want to move on from this after this, it's kind of like a rabbit hole. But these men who are living in isolation because they have PTSD or whatever, that them living in isolation isn't necessarily toxic, but you would admit that they are living in isolation due to like an unhealthy mind. Like they have PTSD, they have trauma, right? That's why they're living.
We don't know what a healthy mind. We don't know what a healthy mind looks like.
You just admitted that they said they could be a danger to society. So
all we can do is
therefore they are not they're automatically not healthy.
Listen, I'll answer your questions, but if you ask me one and I start to answer it and then you override it, I can't answer it. So I'm just letting you know. So you asked me a question. Okay. So you're not answering. Okay. If you're not asking a question,
she was finishing the part of the question, but go ahead.
So I'll just answer your question, right? What happens is when sometimes people ask a question and put their own qualifiers on it and engage in their own form of fallacy called question begging, where what they do is they essentially in question begging, you're putting the conclusion of the argument in the premise itself, which is, it's absurd. So backing up, let's just look at this. What I'm saying to you is very simple. That you don't know what a healthy mind looks like because to you, minds don't even exist. A mind doesn't even exist. It's just a brain. That's all you consider a mind to be. If that is the case, you don't even know what a healthy brain looks like. We don't know what healthy chemical compounds in a brain do or don't look like. Everybody has different brains, and you could have a person who has a brain, which he was a psychopath, and it appears to be completely normal. Or you could have 5 psychopaths who have a brain that looks X way, and then you take another person who's not a psychopath's brain, it looks exactly like that.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
You can't make a determination about what even a healthy brain
But
is.
in this society, we can deem what is
behavior.
We can deem behaviors that are healthy, right? For
And
society.
who
Okay,
gets
sure.
to determine that?
I mean, society, I guess.
Okay,
like,
society's determining it.
So if somebody can't live in a group because they think they're dangerous or they have PTSD or something, they are that would be an unhealthy person in this context, right? So automatically, like again, I don't know if I would call that toxic masculinity, but if somebody's living by themselves because they feel they're dangerous, that wouldn't be an example of the healthiest person in a society.
So, Ghosty, let us assume for a moment you agree with me that war is a necessary condition of humanity, at least so far in our history.
I mean,
before
not,
you
but yes.
Before you continue on, I just want to point out that the topic is a little shifted outside of the dynamics of the prompt. So I want you to go ahead and finish this little variation of it, but I would like to bring it back. I know it's on topic.
Toxic masculinity itself is arbitrary, and so they're trying to give examples of what it is, and I'm trying to refute those examples.
Right.
So, example one, when it comes to this, if it's a necessary condition of war or of the human experience, is going to be war. If somebody is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder and cannot be treated for it, Ghosty, they can't be treated. All treatment has failed, so they self-isolate. What would you do with them, Ghosty?
I mean, if they want to live by themselves, that's fine. And again,
then that sounds perfectly healthy to me.
I'm not saying that's toxic.
So they're fulfilling their societal role. Then is that what you're saying to me? They're fulfilling their societal and social role.
I mean, not. I guess in that, like, I don't know. I don't see it that way.
You don't know?
If they literally cannot get better, which I don't know if that's even true.
Oh yeah. Well, so psychology doesn't cure anybody.
But
there's nobody gets cured.
Okay. Well,
because there's no disease. There's no disease process. It's not a disease, right? You don't like your depression's it's not a disease. So if you have a person who you're treating who responds to no treatment and then self-isolates, it sounds like they're fulfilling their role for societal expectation just fine to me. It doesn't sound like they're unhealthy by your standards. What would be toxic about that?
Again, I'm not saying it's necessarily toxic, but I'm saying that example you're giving isn't like an example of a healthy person. So the example is kind of mute. There's really no point to talking about it.
Then why'd you bring it up as an example of toxic masculinity?
Well, you brought up the war guy in isolation.
So no, it was your Shrek example.
Yeah, this all started with Shrek, and then Andrew. Hold on. It started with Shrek, and then Andrew pointed out why he isolated himself. He broke down what you were saying about it.
Because society rejected him.
Yeah, Shrek wasn't a war victim.
He went to war.
Yeah,
right?
so let's look at your ideas. Well, he was suffering from very similar post-traumatic stress disorder that you would see from somebody who was in a war.
Do you disagree with my definition of toxic masculinity? I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think that social carnage fits it better.
Okay, so you agree that the underlying thing exists, and I guess I mean debate one by that standard at least, so we can move on to whatever
I agree
else.
that social carnage exists and is a necessary conditional for humanity and is good.
What is social carnage? I don't know what that means.
But I literally spent my whole opening defining it for you. Would you like me to pull it back up for you?
Or would you like explain what you meant by it a little bit in a more conversational manner, right?
Yeah, so social carnage would be behavior which women consider to be suboptimal in men and toxic.
So to translate, I believe like men would in theory view this as normal behavior. This is just what they do.
And
like
you
he gave
consider
the
it to be
example, right? He gave the example of like shooting the squirrel with the BB gun and the ha 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 fuck you, whatever. Whereas a woman would look at that. A woman would look at that and get the ick from it.
I'm driving down the road and I swerve to hit the raccoon and my wife is freaking out and I'm like, ha 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 ha.
I think if you do that on purpose,
that toxic?
I personally
is that toxic?
Think
maybe.
Okay.
That might
can you Can you scientifically break down how that's toxic? Why is that toxic?
I think it would suggest an eagerness to engage in violence in a way that is probably unproductive for engaging with society. But I mean,
it seems highly productive.
if that's the way you want to
Well,
engage, I just think you're going to run into more conflict if you embrace that in more situations than not.
What conflict? Usually the guy behind me, he swerves too because he wants to make sure it's dead.
Oh my God.
What do you mean?
Oh my God.
And by the way, that's what you
Fantastic. You're
call.
fostering
Hang on, that's what you
community.
call pickup points. So if I get 10 points for the initial hit and it's not dead and it's still like dragging across the road, and then the guy behind me swerves to take it out completely, he picks up 20 points. Now that
I mean,
fucker and me
it's
are
a
in a
funny
contest.
bit, but you're not really addressing anything, right?
No, I am. I'm asking you why that's toxic. Prove it's toxic. Prove it.
I mean, I think I just said that, like, if you are seeking, it could suggest, I'm not saying it necessarily does. I'm saying it could suggest an eagerness to engage in violence where violence isn't necessary.
What do
Especially
you-
in a
well,
car,
hang on,
where
hang on,
you're,
wait,
where
wait,
you're,
what
like,
do you mean
endangering the lives
necessary?
of other people.
Wait, what do you mean necessary? This is exactly what I mean by social carnage. I think that men have a standard for when necessary is that women do not have. I think, for instance, if a guy's talking shit to me about my wife and I smack him across the mouth, that was necessary. However, you could make the argument it was unnecessary, couldn't you, Ryan?
So it was necessary to put the people who are in the car's lives in danger to kill a raccoon on the road.
Their lives
for
weren't
no
in
reason?
danger. Their lives weren't in danger.
I mean,
So
you
you're
don't know what could
swerving to hit the
happen.
squirrel?
Yeah.
Yeah, you give it a slight swerve.
There could be a
Yep.
pedestrian walking or something that you didn't
Yeah, there's no
see. There could be-
pedestrian.
Well, you don't know that.
Yeah, you do know that because you have eyeballs. I don't
Well,
know
if you
I don't
don't
know
see
about you, but
them-
when I'm
if
driving,
you
I
don't
can see
see them,
pedestrians.
There's blind spots. There's tons of
Yeah,
things
that's
that
a
could happen.
condition of driving, period. I could not see a pedestrian, I guess, who's right in front of me,
Okay,
too.
but if you're purposely swerving to kill an innocent animal for no reason, I think
Innocent?
that's pretty unnecessary.
Innocent. Raccoons are
See, now we're
killers.
debating the innocence
Well,
of a squirrel instead of talking
an
about the
innocent-
question of the debate,
innocent
right?
Raccoons are
versus-
murdering
innocent-
psychopaths.
Innocent versus like a bear that's
no,
coming
wait
to
a
kill
second.
you.
I
Like,
am helping society. Raccoons are psychopathic lunatics who steal, they rob, they kill with wild abandon, they kill chickens, they steal eggs, they put families' livelihoods at risk.
what are you
I am
talk-
doing my part as a member of the community. What we have done is we have decided to play a game in order to help keep the population of these fucking vermin down. And so when you see one, you smack them, you take them out, right? And it helps thin them out. And so what we did was we took this trait that you would consider to be violent or
I live in the
psychopathic.
city.
Hang on.
I walk up to
Or
raccoons
hang on,
like on
listen,
a daily
listen.
basis.
You don't
They're
walk up to
not- they're
raccoons
fine.
in this city. But anyway,
Are you kidding? They're
yeah,
literally
take a
in the
video next
street
time.
everywhere.
Yeah, you go pet a raccoon, take a video next
I
time.
don't
But anyway,
pet them.
yeah,
I'm not
anyway,
against
so
hunting or anything.
so let me
I don't
finish my
know.
point. My point is that here's what happens because these things are such a plague, right? What we do out here in the country is we play a little game, right? Where we kill the shit out of these little bastards every time we see them. Huge social good, by the way. Helps preserve people's livelihoods, helps keep chickens alive, helps keep their eggs intact, right? But from your view, it'd be toxic as fuck, even though it actually serves a greater purpose, right?
In a
Serves a
car.
greater
It was actually
purpose. And what I'm
asserted
saying
it was
by
necessarily
necessary social carnage is you don't understand that portion of why men's behavior is this way. Men's behavior is not always altogether apparent to women who don't see
Andrew,
the bigger picture or
you
let me
literally
finish or feminine men who don't see the bigger picture, don't understand that men can use what you consider to be toxic masculinity is actually social carnage, which is good for society generally.
Mhm. You said
And
that
it exists.
3 times. But you literally said
Social
the reason
carnage
you were
exists.
doing it, the reason you were running over the raccoon wasn't for society goodness or to help the chicken and the eggs and shit. It was to get 10 points and
Yeah.
laugh at your wife who yelled at you.
Yeah, but it still serves a greater purpose. So what? So what if I enjoyed
not
the
the
process
reason-
of running the little bastard over? What does that have to do with
You're
anything?
just adding on other things to try to make it seem
To try to
necessary.
explain to you that the things that you consider to be toxic actually serve a greater good. Same thing with aggression in men. Same thing with men who are willing to commit to violence for various actions at various times, even though you think it might not be justified because you may hurt your feelings. Let me ask you this, Ghosty. If you were out with your boyfriend, right, and a guy walked over and he started calling you a bunch of names, let's say he called you like just the most horrible shit you could imagine, but he didn't touch you. He didn't touch you. He didn't put his hands on you. Should your boyfriend defend your honor?
It's honestly not even worth it.
He shouldn't defend your honor.
I mean, it depends on the situation, but in most cases, I would say it's just not worth it to get into these. Like,
So
I
what if
just
the
don't
guy
give a
looks at
fuck.
him and he says,
He doesn't
"You're
give
not
a
even
fuck.
going to protect your woman's honor? I could just talk to her like this, bro."
Yeah, our egos aren't that we don't care. We'll just walk
So
away
your
and go have a
boyfriend
good
wouldn't.
time.
Yeah, I
Your
don't know that
boyfriend wouldn't
the
care.
like the idea that
No.
like not engaging in violence in that situation is like a
Okay.
shameful thing. I think is
Hang on.
is
Hang on.
kind
That's
of more
totally fair.
embarrassing. Like
Totally fair.
you're giving the control over
Can-
to that guy who's like trying
Yeah,
to
yeah.
provoke you, like
I
which is a
get
very
it, Ryan.
weak-minded thing to do, right?
Ryan, I get it. I get it. So I'll just ask you the same
Apparently not, I
question.
don't know.
Let's say that Ghosty is your girlfriend, okay, and you were out with her on the town, and some guy was just being horrible to her and calling her all sorts of names and besmirching her honor. Would
Yeah,
you?
I've been out in
Would you
town
do
with
Ryan?
women.
Would you
and
do something?
yes,
Would you do something about it?
yeah, I speak up when I'm in situations like that. Yes,
You're going to speak up,
yes.
but that could lead to violence, Ryan.
It could if someone else initiates it, but I'm less likely to.
So
Yeah,
that's
but
why,
hang on. You just speaking up can initiate violence, Ryan. Like if you
that's why
hadn't
I
said
said it
anything,
depends.
if you hadn't
Not
said
necessarily.
anything, wait, how's you speaking up going to defuse violence?
It doesn't necessarily, but it can. I'm pretty. I don't know. I've been in a lot of situations where I've been pretty decent at de-escalating the situation. I think a good amount of emotional intelligence can help with that. So that's another thing.
Emotional
that,
That's why I
rejected
said
by
it
you.
depends. You have to be able to read the situation. Like, is this person super drunk and they seem like they're trying to start a fight, or are they just like walking by and saying shit? And you can tell, you can like say something back. And
What if he
they're
grabbed
probably
her
just gonna
ass,
keep
Ryan?
walking.
What if he was walking by and he grabbed her ass? What would you do then?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure. You're not sure what you would do if a guy went over and grabbed your woman's ass. You're not sure what you would do.
I might get in his face.
I'd probably smack him.
Yeah. Well, here's the
I'd rather
thing.
me
Here's the
smack
thing,
him
Ryan.
than my
Let
boyfriend.
me just ask you this last question, and then I'll submit myself to your inquiry. Do you think that a woman who you're out with, who gets her ass grabbed by a random guy, she turns around, is confronting him, and you aren't sure what to do, and another guy walks over and says, "Hey, fucker," and lays his ass out, who do you think she's going home with that night, Ryan? You or that guy?
Probably still me.
No. Okay. And you are, for the record,
I
Ryan,
mean,
you are.
I've never
record,
been in a
Ryan,
situation where I felt like
yeah,
my relationship with
but for the
a
record,
partner
Ryan,
was gonna change in one
yeah.
quick moment because
For
of
the record,
an assault.
yeah. For the record, though, Ryan, you are single, right?
Currently, yeah, but I spent like 10 years not being single.
Mm-hmm.
And I do also, Neo, you're an excellent partner for Andrew, letting him take all the mic time. But I do want to let you know you can chime in at any time, and if you want to engage, please feel free to jump in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I actually wanted to ask Ghosty a question based off of her opening statement. Some of your descriptions for toxic masculinity, I felt lent themselves to general human traits as a whole. For example, you use the example of cheating and wanting to know somebody's location on their phone. Is that something that's solely a masculine trait, or do women exhibit those same behaviors as well?
No, it's not solely masculine. So I added on that if a guy is doing this for the reason of like to prove his manhood, or because so like if a guy is cheating on women, that doesn't necessarily mean it's like toxic masculinity. But once he's doing it because he's like, well, I'm a man and this is just what men do and I'm allowed to do this because I'm a man, that would be toxic masculinity. But and same with the possessiveness. If a guy feels like he has to be possessive over his woman because he feels like, I'm the man, I can't have other like she can't hang out with other guys or have like guy friends, or
Yeah, but do women
he
exhibit those same traits?
yeah, and they could be seen, that could be done under toxic femininity too.
So it's not predominantly a male thing, right?
It's not only men, no.
Okay, so but in the context in which you were using it in your opening statement, it was a part of what you would consider toxic masculinity to be.
If he's doing it to like prove his masculinity or display his manlyhood or something like that, yeah.
Do you believe that men as a whole are toxic?
No.
Okay. Do you
And
feel
they're
safe when you
overstated.
walk down the street?
I mean, I'm kind of like a more of like a careless person. I've been in like a lot of situations, so I just don't really care as much. Usually I feel safe there. Sometimes I don't feel safe depending on the situation, but I do feel safer with a guy with me, yeah.
Okay, because sometimes I feel that when people are describing traits of what's quote unquote toxic masculinity, there's a lot of things that get lost in the shuffle. You're basically saying that this is inherent in who they are and their personalities, but Yeah, sure, men might, be quicker to violence than women. But women also, have their own traits. For example, their innuendo, reputation, destruction. These are things how they can exhibit them being upset at somebody. They might key your car instead of cheating on you, or they might cheat back on you for revenge as well. So I just feel like lumping those traits together. I think of it more as toxic people rather than toxic masculinity, because there are people that are inherently toxic, but to kind of put it all in the category of men, I just think doesn't really seem to be realistic.
Well, I did say there is toxic femininity too, but I think what makes it either toxic masculinity or toxic femininity is when they're doing it based on like their gender. So they're doing it to like as a display of their like manliness, or to be seen as more of a man, or to prove their manhood in like that sort of sense. If you're doing these things because it's like I'm a man, or I'm a woman, so this is what I can get away with, or something kind of thing like that, or a more inherent trait to a certain gender, and then using those traits in a toxic way, that's what I would categorize as toxic masculinity or toxic femininity. But of course, there's toxic just like human behavior. But yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to add that I think I'm open to like a conversation about whether or not like toxic masculinity is like a productive term for what's being identified. But I think the core that's being argued is like the things that are being identified by this phrase by like scholars who write about this stuff. Like these are like real things
What scholars?
that are being examined. I mean, we could look at the APA. I mean, if you want like specific names,
So it's an argument ad populum. Can you logically demonstrate
sure.
it?
I mean, you can call it that, but again, like whatever your issues are with.
I'll tell you what. I'll make it empirical. Hang on. I'll make it empirical then.
Whatever your issues are with the research, all I'm saying is there are people identifying these things, and if we agree they exist, they're just not exclusive to men. That's fine. I don't mind that.
No, I'm not sure that the nature of of them being toxic, which would be bad, right? Toxic would be bad, right? Yeah, so that's my dispute.
I think part of the definition.
Yeah, that's my dispute. I don't think that these behaviors are bad, Ryan. So no, we actually don't just disagree on the semantics. We disagree on whether or not the toxic, which would be bad, that these are even bad behaviors. So let's start with this.
Do you think sexual assault is bad?
Oh my God, dude. Okay, I'll tell you what. Are you sexually assaulting?
Sexual assault is bad?
It depends on how you define it.
Are you going to answer the question? Do you think sexual assault is bad? You don't need to define sexual assault.
Well, do you know why I need you to? I'll explain why.
Because you're thinking I'm loading in like some
no, I'm not even thinking it's loaded. Let me just explain myself. A woman told me.
Then maybe like
a woman told me, a Marxist feminist told me, if my wife woke me up with a blowjob, that was sexual assault. Ryan, is that sexual assault?
I would not identify that as sexual assault.
Do you understand why I would want you to define and tell me what you mean by that term?
I'd be surprised. I'm surprised that you think I would think that's sexual assault. So it's kind of
it doesn't matter what you're surprised about.
That you would understand.
Is that good rationality for me to ask you how you would define the term, so that I make sure that I know what I'm agreeing to or not agreeing to?
Yeah, I think it is fair.
You can imagine the worst case scenario.
Unconsensual sexual.
My wife waking me up with a blowjob. That would be unconsensual, right?
See, this do you think that sexual assault is a real thing? Like,
yeah.
Okay.
But I don't know what you mean by it.
So
do you think
I don't know what you mean by it.
I think a man and wife situation.
Give me examples of what you mean by it, and then I can answer your question, Ryan.
I'm asking by your own standard, by your own definition, even.
Okay, so you want my definition of sexual assault?
I'm just asking. You don't have to give it. I'm just saying, by your definition, would you say that some sexual assault is bad at least?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Okay. Do you think there's any manifestations of sexual assault that are related to men viewing women as or viewing feeling entitled to women?
Sure.
Okay, I would say that's toxic masculinity.
That's nice. I would say that it's sexual assault. Based on based on an individualistic category. But what would qualify that as toxic masculinity and not just sexual assault?
Because it's related. This is what Ghosty's been getting at. It's related to their perception of themselves and their manhood, and their manhood being viewing that in relation to women, and then they're feeling entitled to that woman's body to the point where they assault her. And it's not very complicated logic, to be honest.
I see. So when you're saying toxic masculinity, it's when a man does anything bad, which is also in relation to any masculine qualities that you assign to him.
More so that it. Can you say that again? I don't know if I agree with the exact framing, but just repeat it for me.
Many masculine characteristics or qualities that you assign to a man, and then they do bad thing, and those qualities are some way in there for bad things that they do.
If those things are driving them, if they're like manhood is like the thing that they feel entitles them to that person, I would say that is, yeah, that's the example of what people identify as toxic masculinity, which again you seem to say could be completely redefined as social carnage. I'm not sure if it works in that context exactly, but
and Ryan, what is the actual prompt for the debate? Can you tell me?
Is toxic masculinity real?
Yeah. Brian, can I ask you, are gender roles real?
Are they real things that manifest in society? Yes.
Well, are they real though?
And probably have some biological core to a lot of them. Yeah.
Okay, that seems completely fair to me. So gender roles to you are real, and they manifest somewhat from innate biology, right? Is that right?
That's what we just walked through. Yeah.
God, I'm just clarifying. I'm trying to be as good faith as possible. Ryan, do you want to abolish gender roles?
Sure. I want to abolish the imposition of gender roles. I don't care about people expressing their gender. I like my gender. I like feeling masculine myself.
So if something can be changed, it's just a social construct, right? Like gender.
I mean, I don't think like social construct means infinitely malleable. I don't think those are what. Yeah.
What else could it mean? It's construction of the mind. If you can
like
change
money's
it,
a social construct, but it still has.
And you can change it.
Yeah, but based on
its value,
not by yourself. Like I can't decide that a $1 bill is worth $100, you know, or anything like.
You could if you were by yourself.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, so it's a social construction. So I just got to ask you this then, Ryan. If it is the case that gender itself is something that you want to abolish, right? And you don't think that is masculinity?
No, again, I said the imposition of
it. Okay. So, is masculinity gendered?
Yes.
It is gendered.
Do you think I want to abolish masculinity?
No. I'm just asking if can women be masculine? Biological women be masculine?
Of course. Yeah.
So can biological women engage in toxic masculinity?
Yeah, sure.
They can.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me how a woman could engage in toxic masculinity, please. I mean, a biological woman.
Well, I mean, there's kind of two angles to it. The first could be that she's viewing, like, I would say that her relationship to like the men around her, like encouraging them to view their masculinity in a particular way that is harmful to her and other people around him. And then also it could be, I mean, I guess when you said biological woman, I assume you also would include like trans men there, and that their perspective of being a man could I mean, like trans men express toxic masculinity as well, for sure. So that, I mean,
so women and men can both be toxically masculine.
They can both contribute to toxic masculinity, no doubt. Both
of them can be toxically masculine.
Yeah, I mean, what you would call biological women and I would call trans man is what I'm, because it's related to the identity. Their like identity of being a man is like the thing that we're talking about is driving them to exhibit some behavior, right?
So like, I innately feel like I'm a man, and I'd be viewed as less of a man if I was a trans man if I didn't like essay this chick. That would be.
I mean, that's a very reductive way to put it, but I guess you can say that.
Okay, got it. So I just got to ask, isn't it the case then that all you're actually doing is you're just assigning any bad behavior? Like, what would bad behaviors be that a man
not just any bad behavior?
But hang on. I just want to distinguish this. What bad behaviors could there be that men could exhibit that would have nothing to do with them being men?
I think most of the things that we've discussed, like if they're not manifesting because of their relationship with their own masculinity, then that would be not necessarily.
How could you know that though? Like I would say that you could not divide masculinity from man because it's part of man's ontology. So isn't every bad behavior a man engages in also going to be a masculine behavior because it's a man doing it?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I don't know how that follows then. I can't not be man, right? There's no way for me to not be
You
male.
can be whatever you want to be, Andrew.
But there's no way for me to not be male, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So if that's the case, then the fact that I'm a male and I do something bad, how do I disassociate thing male, which also governs behavior of me, from thing? How do I
It's
even do
about
that?
whether or not you're trying to manifest your perception of that manhood in an action.
That would be every action I took.
Okay. Well,
Wouldn't that be every
fine.
action everybody takes? Would have to be a manifestation of them, their physiology, their mentality based on physiology as well, would manifest into all behaviors everybody took.
I think it's about your mindset. So, like,
now it's about mindset.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was like it's been like part of the
No,
whole time.
That was
right?
the
was it?
Maybe I can offer a translation. I don't think that translated well. So Ryan, for instance, he's using a some not all argument. So basically, like all apples can be fruits, but not all fruits will be apples, right? So what he's saying is like if you're saying toxic masculinity, then you're saying all men are toxic, because it's the some not all. If that helps.
But we're not saying
Yeah.
that, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
Ghosty, go ahead.
neither of us.
Well,
have
here,
said
no,
that.
well, here's why I'm trying to make the disassociation. I'm trying to like untangle this mess because it's a fucking mess. If a guy, I think I can understand from your perspective when you say a guy feels like his manhood's threatened, so he has to essay some chick. That's an example of toxic masculinity, right? That would be correct.
Yeah. Yes.
What if a guy just has really high adrenaline and the guy grabs his woman's ass and he knocks him out? Is that toxic masculinity?
Not necessarily.
That's probably
Is
just
that-
toxic behavior.
Is that action good though?
No, it's toxic
different
behavior, but
question.
it's not coming from toxic masculinity, I guess.
Okay, but the reason you would expect that a man would do that before a woman would, right?
I mean, honestly, I know a lot of women who assault men pretty often. And
Yeah, I don't know.
actually,
if you
I would say
like, go out a lot.
I would
So
say
what was
that's
the point?
toxic femininity because women feel like they can get away with that. And
What was
so
the point of
they
bringing
do
up
that.
SA earlier then?
Yeah, I
If
don't
we're
get
not
it.
attributing it primarily to men.
Yeah.
Well, I
question.
didn't attribute it.
No, you didn't. Ryan
Primary.
brought it up, so I guess I'm asking Ryan.
Oh,
Sure.
You
Yeah,
asked
I
if
mean,
Andrew
I was
believed
saying,
in SA, right?
yeah, and I was just saying that in relation to like when men feel entitled to a woman's body because they're a man, like that's again, it comes back to that because they're viewing it through the lens of their masculinity specifically.
Okay, so because they feel entitled, you're considering it all right. You're considering it SA if a man feels entitled to a woman's body and he actually does something about it, right? Am I getting that correct?
Wait, can you say? I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? I feel
All right, you're saying that it's SA if a man feels entitled to a woman's body and he, actually does something about it rather than just keeping it in his own thoughts, right?
I mean, it would be if he against her will, and it's like, yeah. I mean,
Okay,
it feels like you're removing something from it when you said.
No.
I'm
I'm asking for clarification. I'm just trying to get what you actually said. And all right, if you flip the coin on the other side, right? If a woman tries to essay a man because she feels entitled to him, and if he doesn't reciprocate, she'll call him gay or whatever the case may be, which is usually what happens. Would you consider that her being toxic or it just being a crappy human being?
Yeah, I think we've just go ahead.
I would say that's toxic femininity. That's an
I agree.
example of toxic femininity.
Okay, but if,
like,
if
and not only that, but she's leveraging his toxic masculinity, like, or his perspective. I don't want to be gay, like that, like she's leveraging that by being toxic and through her femininity to make him do stuff he doesn't.
Yeah,
want to
I'm
do,
still confused. I'm actually still
Calling
confused
a guy
about
gay
this
because he doesn't want to sleep with you is weaponizing his masculinity and
yeah, I get
doing
that.
as
I
a
think
woman,
I
so.
understand the distinction and why you have to say there's toxic femininity because you don't want to hold a dual standard here. But I actually still don't really
think it's real.
Yeah, but I still don't really understand it because it seems to me like any bad action which would be associated with maleness could easily fit into this category of toxic masculinity.
It's about motive. The motive is what you're missing, I think.
Yeah, but not really, because couldn't my motive necessarily change just by my sex not being male?
What do you mean by that?
Meaning that if I was born a female, maybe I wouldn't knock the guy out who I knocked out.
Okay.
So wouldn't that be associated with the fact that I'm a man to begin with?
You think No, because not all guys
Well, I don't know how
knock
you.
people out.
Yeah, I think that the attribution, though, of everything everybody does is tied into physiology. It's tied into how your brain operates, how your body operates, the various chemicals which are always pumping through them. I could easily make the counter case that a man who goes and robs a bank because he just has a lot of really high testosterone, for instance,
So you're
right?
making a deterministic
We were
argument? You
able
don't
to
believe in free
correlate it.
will?
We were able to correlate it, right? Well, no, I'm doing an internal critique. What does that have to do with my view? So anyway, oh, I could. Why couldn't you easily just as soon attribute every action from a man who had too much testosterone, for instance, robbing a bank? Why is that not toxic masculinity? You say it's because there's a motive which determines it. But
Yeah.
it's like, but it's maleness
That's the
itself,
difference.
which could have led to the motive itself. Like if he didn't have that high of a testosterone, he never would have committed X crime. That
Well,
seems to be a masculine trait, and
it's
it seems to
also
be
like
tied to, hang on, and it seems to be tied to his maleness. So if that's the case, why is that not toxic masculinity? I still don't actually get that.
because it doesn't have to be tied to your maleness. It could also be tied to how much money you have or some circumstance you're in or something like that. It doesn't have to be tied to your gender. But if you tie it to your gender, if you're like, oh, well, I'm allowed to get away with bad behavior because I'm a man, that's what men do, like this is just what guys do, boys will be boys kind of thing, then that is an example of toxic masculinity. If you're
Yeah,
doing
but I
those,
don't know.
That's
Yeah,
bringing
but
that
again,
distinction over and over this whole time.
yeah, I understand that you keep making the distinction, but it doesn't make sense to me because it just seems like it
I see that.
all of this would just tie back to again, physiology, behavioral patterns between men and women. I could just tie any bad behavior which a man does over a woman that's more common as being toxic masculinity. And that would fit the criteria for what you consider toxic masculinity to be. And I'll read it to you so that you know I'm correct about this. Here is what your definition was that you gave me. The definition was, quote, this is why I always take notes, by the way. Behaviors or traits which are masculine used in an unhealthy way. Okay, but when we're talking about behaviors or traits which are used in an unhealthy way, I would consider all of those to be tied to things like sex to begin with, right? Otherwise, how are you determining what's masculine or feminine to begin with? They're associated by your own admission to sex. So if that's the case, if you're tying masculinity in this definition to sex itself, and then you claim anything which is a negative, that's definitionally true. I'll read you the definition again, Ryan.
No, I understand.
That was
I think
her
what's happening is
definition.
this is a manifestation of your inability or unwillingness, really is a more apt term for it. Unwillingness to engage with like what gender identity is and how that's different from biological sex. Like you can't separate
You
these
just
things because
said,
to your
Brian,
worldview,
I'm
right?
using your definition.
But I think what we're distinguishing is your internal view of your masculinity and how that relates to the action. Like I guess, like Neo, can you?
That's
do you
not what the
understand distinction we're
definition.
making?
Can I
Like,
read?
I'm
Can I read
curious.
the?
Can I ask your debate partner? He hasn't talked very much.
I know, but I just want to get this cleared up, and then you can talk.
Gentlemen,
yeah,
I'd like
I'll talk to you after this if you want.
Yeah,
also.
that's great.
Yeah, I'd like to
go
hear
ahead
from him.
But
hold
I want
on.
to finish.
Go ahead and let Andrew finish reading the definition, and then
when you're
Ryan,
done.
you're welcome to inquire with Neo.
It's behaviors or traits which are masculine used in an unhealthy way. That is extraordinarily vague. And I feel like I could basically categorize any fucking thing that a man does that is bad into that. So, for instance, a behavior or trait which is masculine. Well, this is going to be societally determined. Yeah. What is masculine?
I thought we were done after you read the definition, or are we?
No,
It was
I'm not done with the inquiry
Okay,
yet. Stop trying to fucking divert. I'd like to finish the inquiry. Maybe Ghosty can do it because you're spurging too much, Ryan. But anyway,
behaviors or traits that are inherently masculine used in a toxic, unhealthy, or negative way.
yeah. What is a trait that's inherently masculine?
So things like, I will say, I feel like guys have a more, like a higher sex drive. They have more testosterone, which makes them more. They do have higher tendencies for being aggressive, and killing and stuff like that. And
so wait a second.
like two examples.
So wait a second. So to get this right, men have higher testosterone and they kill more. Those would be things which are inherently masculine. So that if a man kills somebody, that's toxic masculinity.
Again, you're missing the motive. So
The
if a
definition
guy
doesn't say shit about motive. It says inherently masculine.
What
That's
definition?
your
used,
definition.
I mean, that's
being
not the
Hers,
definition we worked with.
hers.
yeah. So and
Whose
then
definition
after
should I
that,
use but hers, bro?
after that, it says being used. So being like used. So,
Yeah, being
so
used.
that's like the motive. So if
I
you're
agree.
using these inherent masculine traits
Mhm.
in a toxic way,
And
then
an
that,
inherent masculine trait for you would be testosterone. That's what you just
well,
said.
testosterone can cause traits that are inherently masculine, right?
Well, okay, well then what's an inherently masculine trait?
I just gave you 2 examples.
So testosterone was one, right?
I gave you aggression and hypersexuality.
Aggression is a masculine trait.
I'd say that it's not to say that women can't be aggressive, but I would say that men are more likely to be aggressive or show.
So
aggression
anytime
because
a
of
man,
testosterone. Yeah.
so then by your definition, then anytime a man is aggressive, right? That is toxic masculinity. It has to be definitionally.
if he's doing it to prove his.
Show me in your
manhood.
definition where it says that.
Okay, maybe I didn't write the definition perfectly. I wrote it today. If you want me to add on, I mean, I came further in my opening statement. I said, remember, in order for these behaviors or tendencies to fit toxic masculinity category, they need to be done by a man specifically because he believes this behavior is connected to his manhood in some way. So
Yeah,
he's
but
doing it. And my
this
first
is what I
definition
meant. Yeah.
was actually acting on toxic or unhealthy behaviors to prove or display masculinity.
Yeah. So what you did.
I had
So here's
2
what you did, and this is
definitions.
what I predicted in my opening statement. In order to make this definitionally true, you added qualifiers to your own definition that you gave me because that was the only. So I can do the same thing. Okay. Toxic masculinity is any man that's missing a tooth. That's a man who's toxically masculine. Prove me wrong.
That's fine. I don't think I can. But so Neo Starling, I'm curious.
No, stop,
can you
stop, Ryan. I'm
vocalize
talking.
the...
I'm talking to.
No, actually, I don't need to. I don't need to stop.
Can I
actually.
finish? Can I finish the inquiry? Ryan,
you're not my king.
Ryan,
Andrew.
can I finish the inquiry? We're right at the end. We're right at the end, Ryan. I just want my last question answered, Ryan. That's it. Ghosty, can you prove me wrong?
I'm taking a break from you.
Every man who's missing a tooth is toxically masculine. Can you prove that wrong?
Well, what's your definition? You would have to give me.
I just gave it to you. Every man who's missing a tooth is toxically. That's what toxic masculinity is.
Yeah. If you define it that way, then yeah, sure, that's fine. So Neo, do you
Can you let her answer? Ryan,
Go ahead,
stop talking, fucking Ryan. Let her finish.
Sorry, go ahead and answer the question about a tooth and masculinity.
The definition is that toxic masculinity is men who don't have teeth.
Men who are missing a tooth.
Men who are missing a tooth.
Can you prove me wrong?
That would mean it exists, though, right? If you define it that way.
I don't think it has to do with toxicity, so it just doesn't really compute.
What do you mean it doesn't have to do with toxicity? That's weird.
Missing a tooth.
Yeah, but I think that, it rubs me the wrong way when men are missing a tooth. And so I think that that's inherently toxic because it affects me negatively.
Okay, I also gave my definition for toxic in this context. I said I'm using it to describe something that is detrimental, damaging, or hurtful to oneself or others.
Yeah, that's true. And that definition can stand on its own fine until you use your other definition, which explains what toxic masculinity means, which is not the same as the word toxic. So in this case, why can't I just make a semantic distinction and come up with the same type of proprietary definition you are? And then you would have to just concede, well, I can't prove that wrong, right? So this is why it's important for us to get the semantics out of the way. I was trying to do that in the beginning, but Ryan, for some reason, Ryan thinks that talking about semantics is a trap, even though it's the only way you can have discourse.
I don't think
right.
So.
What we should do is we should have unpacked the semantics to begin with, so we could look at your definition. Because when I just looked at your definition, you added a bunch of proprietary shit to it post definition to make it true, and it's like, you can just do that with anything, though. Do you understand that now? You can do that with anything and then say, because that's how I proprietarily define it, therefore it's true, debate over. It's like, no, that's not how it works. I need to know what your proof is that these behaviors are toxic and come from the inherent masculine features of a man. That's what I need to know.
Okay, so there are I can list some authors who write about toxic masculinity, right? Like E.H. Thompson, I believe is one, Springer. These are, and when they talk about it, they use definitions that describe things that men actions that men take on behalf of what they feel they should do as men. And so this is like, again, like the core of what we've been discerning, which is why I'm just curious. I want to ask Neo, if you'll let me, Andrew, if you'll give me permission to ask your debate partner a question.
I told you when I was done with my inquiry. I told you when I was done with my inquiry.
Are you now, or are we doing another one?
Yeah, we were done.
What's up, Ryan?
Okay.
Why do you think you've been spurging for the last 5 minutes? No one's interrupted you.
It's all yours, Ryan.
I'm just curious. Do you recognize the distinction that we're making between like something that just a man does that's bad, or them doing an action because they view that that's how men are supposed to act?
I mean, you'd have to look at it societally, because men inherently, okay, like if we're to use the example of men having more testosterone in their bodies than women, right? And because of that, they're more sexually aggressive, or whatever the case may be. You know, that is something that's inherent to us. But what was I going to say? Testosterone is also utilized, you know, to build muscle, to build drive within another human being, to drive us to do the things that we do. So even though you might look at that as a negative trait at times, you know, women and men alike both attribute these same characteristics when it comes to trying to mate a partner. You know, if a woman is hitting on a man, for example, you know, and, you know, he's not down. Again, I used the example earlier about him being treated as a homosexual because of that. And a man might, you know, maybe had a few drinks in the system, or he probably got his pride hurt, and he felt that, hey, you know what, this isn't good. I'm gonna do what I got to do. Those I would attribute to just people being crappy human beings as a whole. Like that's what. All right.
Sure.
What the whole idea of toxic masculinity.
Can you elaborate on that? The pride comment, the how it hurt his pride. Can you elaborate on that part of it?
Well, pride is also not just a masculine trait. It's also a human being trait. Right. You know what I mean? We all have pride. Sure. You know, your feelings can get hurt, and you felt that, you know, something was unjustified, whether it had to do with talking to another human being, or, you know, you failed a test. You know, you probably thought you could have scored a higher grade, but you didn't. You know, these things are traits of people as a whole. It doesn't matter whether you are a man or a woman in this particular situation. So the idea
I totally
that
agree.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no. So, you know, all right, let me ask you a question. If your boy comes up to you, right? He's a man. He's not a woman. He doesn't identify as anything other than a man, right? And he comes up to you and he says, "Hey, you know what? I bought this new shirt today, man. How does it look on me, right?" And you think, in your heart of hearts, you know it looks horrible. It was one size too short. You know, his belly is sticking out of the sides, and you tell him, "Hey, man, that shirt looks crappy on you. You need to lose a couple of pounds so that you can fit in that shirt properly." Do you think you're being toxic when you are telling him that, or do you think you're just expressing a truth to him so that you don't hurt his feelings?
I mean, I guess it depends. I'm not
I don't
sure.
think that's toxic. I mean, and again, it depends like how you say it, I guess. Like if you're just being an asshole about it.
No.
Like,
I mean,
it probably depends on your relationship with that person a lot.
I mean, this is your boy.
Friends I would say that to, friends I wouldn't, right?
And this is just how you talk to your friends, right?
Yeah. Then that's not toxic. No.
Okay, now if you flip the shoe on the other foot, and a woman brought a dress and it didn't fit her, and, you know, her homegirls were like, "Hey, girl, that looks great on you. You know, go out to the club and do your thing." Do you think the women in that case did a service to their friend by telling them that it looks great, even though they knew it didn't look good on them, or because they worded it in a certain way, now it's justified? So which one was toxic?
Wait,
I mean, they could both be toxic in different ways, right? But sorry, go ahead.
Okay, but is that inherently a trait of men just being mean? Because men talk to each other this way. You know, so
do women. That's kind of the silly thing, though.
Is it silly? If you really stop and think about it, is it silly? Because we're talking about traits that are inherent to us that make us treat people a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, can I push it back up? Because actually, it's not necessarily that. Like, what we're saying is the perception. If you perceive a certain trait, if you're engaging in an action because you think it's inherent to men, you think men are supposed to do that, and that trait is also like being considered toxic. That's where we're identifying it. It's about your relationship to the view of masculinity, right? Or in femininity, like, because women are supposed to do X, Y, and Z. Like, but not all women do that thing, and not all men do that thing. So it's not inherently male to do either of those things. It's just we're identifying you doing those things in the context of feeling like that's what men are supposed to do.
So like an example close to this of toxic femininity would be like a bunch of girls who don't like another girl, and she's like, "Hey, do you like my shirt?" And they're all trying to fuck with her because they're like, "Oh yeah, it looks great on you. You should totally go out in that." And they know it looks horrible. That's, I think, would be a toxic feminine trait. I could see that because they're using women's attractiveness and beauty against them, which is more of a feminine trait. Like women use attractiveness and looks that they have a higher value, I guess, in society. So that would be like a toxic feminine trait. But for my like experience, most girlfriends who are actually close to each other, if your girl puts on something ugly, you're like, no, you're not wearing that. Like, let's find you something better.
Yeah,
Right? So
but again, I don't really consider that toxic femininity. I just consider that you just not being a very nice person. You get what I'm saying? Like the idea that you're
it's
inherently
attributed. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say the idea that you're inherently toxic just because of whatever chromosomes your body seems to possess, and because societally, you were told that you're supposed to be a certain way, and if not, you're going to be a bad human being. I don't really believe in that. I just think that there are people that are okay human beings, and there are those that are crappy. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you fall under. We're two sides of the same coin.
But nobody's saying you're inherently toxic because you're masculine or because you're feminine. It's using inherent masculine or feminine traits in a negative way.
What
Yeah,
about
but why
domestic
shouldn't we
violence?
just because these traits are all shared between the sexes, all of them, the propensity for all whatever you would consider to be masculine traits and whatever you would consider, otherwise you wouldn't be trans advocates. So you would have to equalize them. You'd have to say both sexes have the propensity for these traits equally across the board, right? At least some propensity for them. Now you could say based on sex, you have higher testosterone, you have this. I agree with all that. But if it is the case, why shouldn't we just individualize it and just say that's toxic behavior and leave masculinity and femininity out of it completely? Why should we accept this definition instead of a much more useful and broad category of this behavior itself is bad, regardless of who's engaging in it? And what does that have to do with the masculine or the feminine? By your worldview, actually, that would be a much better definition.
I agree, but again, it's because of the motive. So if people are doing something to prove their manliness or to prove because it's like a feminine
Yeah, but why use
trait
the
or
loaded
whatever.
term? Why can't we just say that's bad, don't do it? Why should we accept that that's toxic masculinity or this term of toxic masculinity because you add it as a proprietary definition
Well, I think
rather than us just rejecting that and saying that there's some universal behaviors which are preferable from people and this isn't one of them? Why should we ascribe this as a behavior at all? Tell me what the case use here is, why it's so useful, why we should utilize this over his definition, which is you're just a shitty person or you just did a bad thing as a person. Why should we put these loaded terms in the ethos
Well,
exactly?
to be clear, I'm not certainly I'm certainly not asserting that like you have to embrace this term. I don't expect you to start using the term toxic masculinity, Andrew. All I'm saying is that like people do use this
No,
term
that's
to
not my
define
question,
to
bro.
describe.
No, that's
That's
not what
fine
we're
to
talking
describe the
about.
thing that we're talking about here, and like
Dude, you're not even
the
engaging
underlying
with what
thing
I'm
that we're
saying.
identifying and that they're identifying is a real
Yeah.
thing. And we seem to. I think we all agree it is a real
No,
thing. It
I
just,
don't
can
think
answer
I
that.
don't think
I
I
can
don't think
answer
we
moving
all
off of it.
agree. We're not talking about the same
Yeah,
things
it seems
here.
like you don't want to actually talk about it, which
We're
is
not
kind of strange.
talking about the same thing. We're talking past each other.
I
All
can
I've been doing
answer.
is trying to bring the clarity. Go ahead, Ghost. Maybe you can bring
So
clarity.
because ideally in my ideal world where there is like more less like genderization, I don't know if that's a word, but the less like breaking everything down into like gendered boxes, I think it would be an ideal world where we could just say that's a toxic trait, blah 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 blah. But in today's world we do genderize things, so there are lots of people who act a certain way because they have these old like I don't know the word for it. They have these old thoughts in their head that's like, I'm supposed to behave this way because I am a man. I'm supposed to behave this way because I am a woman. And some of these traits can be toxic and unhealthy and hurt themselves and hurt other people. So because we live in this world today, if people are perpetuating these actions and just deeming them masculine or feminine, and then they're acting toxically or unhealthily,
But that makes
badly.
my point for me. So if you want to live in a world where you think that there's less gender allocation for things
Yeah, I want
like
to live in that world,
yeah,
but we don't right now.
but okay, yeah, I get it descriptively, but you want to, so we ought to live in that world. So descriptively, if that's the world you want to live in, I would think you would be trying to reduce loaded terms. Like you would agree with me that this term has been hijacked by feminists for all sorts of other proprietary definitions other than your proprietary definition, right?
Sure, by radical feminists, sure.
And tons of people use it in tons of different ways and very loaded ways, right?
Mhm.
Okay, got it. So the thing is like if that is the case and you want to move towards a world where that's not the case, why the fuck would you advocate its use?
Well,
Why
I'm
would
not
you advocate its use
advocating
instead
its
of
use.
advocating against its use?
I'm addressing reality. I'm addressing that there are people who act in bad ways because they think their gender entitles them to act this way.
Or
Yes,
you
but
think
there's
so,
no
you know.
reason for us to put the term masculinity, especially by your definition, which is inherent masculinity, inherent masculine traits, whatever those are. You say you name two, one's testosterone, this and that. It's so broad that you can encompass so many behaviors in it. It's so subjective, those behaviors you can encompass into it. I would think if you would want to move to a gender-free society, you would want to remove those things to begin with. It doesn't
And-
make any sense why
and
you
I
want to
would
keep
think
using
since
the
you-
loaded terms.
I would think since you don't want to move to a genderless society, that you would be on our side and you would be wanting to use this term
Why?
because for exactly the same reason you don't
Yeah,
want
I don't
a genderless
think
society,
I don't
right?
believe
so
that the
therefore,
things that you consider. So you gave some extreme examples of what you consider to be toxic masculinity, for instance, right? You say a man, essays a woman based on some perceived
he needs to prove
idea.
his manhood. He needs
Yeah,
to
yeah.
fuck women
Why
because
don't you
he
give
doesn't
me-
feel
Or
like
he
he's a
feels
man.
entitled,
now-
or
hang
he
on.
feels
So now we have
entitled
the
to
most
engaging in sex
extreme.
with her.
Yeah.
because
So now
he
we have
can-
the most
like,
extreme. Give me
women are
the
supposed to
least.
submit to him.
Got it. Give me the least extreme. What's the least extreme version of toxic masculinity?
Let me see.
I mean, could be being very domineering in a conversation because you think that you need to demonstrate your masculinity through performative conversational cruelty.
Yeah, or I think even like the
Did
hazing.
Ryan? Were you just trying to say that I was being mean to you?
I'm saying I'm talking about a thing that I do also. I mean, but yes, I'm pointing to you. But yeah, I mean, I also engage in. I'm also not saying that I never.
I'm sorry
do
that you
toxic
engage in
masculinity
those.
or engage
Sorry,
in-
you engage in those
I-
behaviors.
like I
Ryan,
have
but anyway.
I have a relationship with my
Anyway,
own
I was
identity as a
asking
man,
Ghosty. She
and
seems to be
sometimes I do
reasonable
things
and
on
willing
behalf
to
of that.
engage and not spurg. But anyway, Ghosty, go ahead.
I don't think it's spurging.
Were you
Sorry,
done,
I'm trying to
Ryan?
let the woman speak, Ryan.
Very
Were you
good.
You're
done?
being very toxically masculine right now, Ryan. Go ahead.
Okay, let her
Ghosty.
talk now.
So yeah, like hazing is an example. Men, and somebody wrote this in my chat, men in groups trying to like do stupid things to like one up each other, or like I one time I went on like a motorbike with a guy and I like told him, I was like, please do not fucking speed. It's not gonna impress me. Like I don't think it's cool. Like please don't kill me. Like don't. And he starts like going crazy, going like 120 miles per hour. Like I'm like on like it was fucking scary. Like guys
I
do
get it.
these things to try
So
to impress people.
because it's
to
their
be seen as more of a man or whatever, and I think that's
okay.
toxic.
So I just want to make sure I can break this down very quickly. So if your motivation is to engage in like one-upping the other men who are around you, especially through the idea of hazing and in-group preference and things like that, that would be toxic masculinity.
To be, if they're doing it, to be seen as like more
Yeah.
of a man.
Yeah. Like team sports.
No, I don't think team sports are toxic in any way.
What if your whole point of you wanting to score more points and haze the people who are around you and things like this is because it's perceived by everybody as being
Well,
more
if
manly.
If you're playing a sport and that makes you
Mhm.
feel more like a man, that's not, playing sports isn't toxic. So therefore, it's just not toxic.
Yeah, but they're
behavior.
haze. Yeah, but you realize that they haze each other consistently and constantly in team sports.
Well,
and it's
hazing
part
is
of the
different.
culture.
Hazing is different than playing a sport, right?
No, but it's part of male camaraderie and building relationships with men. Hazing is a necessary part of being in groups. It
It's
happens everywhere.
necessary.
Yeah, it's
I
necessary.
think if you want to use football as an example, men are
Well,
tackling each other all day long. They
hang-
also smack each other's butts, which I believe was used as an example earlier. So I
Well,
think if
no,
you wanted to,
some examples of hazing might be getting way too drunk, right? That's a pretty bad thing, right? Examples of hazing might be to kind of ritualistically make up a horrible nickname for a person and call them that often, right? Hazing examples might be, I don't know, you got to jog until you throw up, right? There's all sorts of hazing which happens. And yes, it is a necessary condition inside of male packs. We haze each other constantly and consistently in every work environment I've ever been, at least in the blue collar world, that is the case. And by the way, this is not only normal and regular, but I would consider it to be a good masculine trait. It's part of, do you know why we do that? It's to test out the shit that doesn't belong in the group. You're shit, you don't belong in our group, go away. You're shit, you don't belong in our group, go away. You're shit, you don't belong in our group, go away. That's what the whole purpose of hazing rituals are. So I don't consider that toxic.
So
Why would that be
what
toxic? That
give some
seems like it's the opposite of
examples. Give
toxic.
some examples. Do you think there can be toxic? Do you think there can be hazing that goes too far that isn't good?
Sure.
Okay, so that would be
Why would that
toxic
be
hazing, right?
masculinity, though? Well, when you say toxic, do you just mean the word bad?
Again, so what did I say? It's behavior that is detrimental, damaging, or hurtful to oneself or
So
others.
bad? Is that bad? You just
Sure,
mean bad?
we can conclude it as
Yeah,
bad.
yeah. So I would just say there's all kinds of behavior that I would engage with and say that that's bad. You can do bad things when you're hazing people, but that wouldn't mean that hazing wasn't necessary for in-group preference, because some people can do bad things, right? I would say it's still not an example of toxic masculinity, even though you would say it is.
So there can be appropriate hazing.
Tell me
Sure.
what is appropriate hazing?
I don't know, like, I guess.
Can I be super fucking mean to another guy and call him a bunch of names and give him a horrible nickname and talk a bunch of shit to him and run down his self-esteem?
if you guys are like joking around, you guys are friends, and this is like what you do.
That's not
like,
hazing. You're not friends with them yet. This is part of the ritual to become part of the in-group. That's what you do.
It could be toxic.
Right. You
yeah,
think it could? I
it
think
can be. So again,
yeah, it
like,
can
this is-
be. It's so vague. Like
it I mean, it
you're
is
just
because
yeah, go ahead.
we can't have like super fine lines for like all of these things. Like the behavior is not definitive for like every single person. Like it can go any different
So
way. There's
it
not like a
seems-
fine line.
Quantitative, you know?
Yeah, it just doesn't seem to me then that this has much in the way of case use, this version of toxic masculinity. If even behaviors that I point out that I would think you would consider toxic, you're like, well, it can be based on some ascribed
you do
motivation
it.
that we can't demonstrate. Well, I think
Well,
all of
it's
that
that we're
would be
talking about
based
two
around
components.
masculinity.
We're talking about an interplay
Okay.
between two components, right?
Okay,
The
what are
perception of
the-
one's masculinity or femininity. To talk about toxic masculinity or toxic femininity. I'm sorry, and we're talking about the relationship between one's own gender view as well as the behavior itself, and whether or not that behavior itself is harmful for their, I would say, harmful for their goals. You know, like if you're in a situation and your goals are hindered by you engaging in this behavior, then we could consider that harmful, I guess.
Wait, what if the behavior is an immutable characteristic?
Like what, for example?
Manspreading. Why do guys manspread on the train?
I don't think that people were actually upset about man spreading as much.
No,
as,
well, no, that's
people thought they were, but
often-
sure, yeah, like I don't think
that's not
really
to
a
be just
problem.
utilized
Yeah.
for toxic masculinity. I've heard it many times, but can you answer that? So that's an immutable characteristics. We have testicles, right? And when we sit
Sure.
down, sometimes we got to sit a little spread apart so that we don't crush them and we can let them breathe. Some people consider that to be a toxic male behavior, but it's really just an immutable characteristic that men have that we can't really help. So how do you explain those type of
Yeah.
situations?
I don't know that I'd call man spreading as like toxic masculinity, unless you're spreading your legs like way more than you need to, and you're saying like, well, I can do this.
Who
I'm a man,
determines?
whatever.
Yeah, who
But, like,
determines who needs it?
If
Yeah, like,
you're
who
doing
well,
it
I
to
mean, if
make
you're-
somebody uncomfortable or something,
Yeah.
like I feel like
There's not a
in
Yeah,
most
what if you were doing it
situations,
to make
it's
somebody
not.
uncomfortable? That still doesn't seem like it would fit the criteria for your definition. That you're using something
It's like
inherently
again,
masculine here.
two parts. Like, are you doing? It's like, well, if do you feel entitled to spread your legs as far as you can because, like, oh man, I can sit wherever I want, like, or is it just like I'm just gonna do it and I don't give a shit? Like, I mean, it could be different things, right? The motive is part of the it's a component.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that what you're doing is, again, what you're doing, and leftists do this constantly. What you're doing is you're taking a definition for a subgroup of behavior, giving it a proprietary loaded definition, right? And then what you say in order to prove its existence is you say, based on this proprietary definition, it's just definitionally true. And it's like, but Ryan, that's why I came up with the example to explain to you that I can do this as well. I can just say this is definitionally what toxic masculinity is X, right? And you would have to agree to it. as long as I loaded the proprietary definition with whatever the behavior was. We don't consider this to be toxic masculinity. What Neo Starling is saying is he's like, I think it's better actually to group these as categories of just this is bad behavior or not bad behavior based on social standards. But to use the loaded term of toxic masculinity, or to even say that it's real or always bad, is probably not the best way to characterize these things. You're using a loaded term in order to just kind of make it and giving a loaded definition to make it proprietarily true. My proprietary definition true because it applies to these things. That's what makes it true. And it's like, but you can do that with anything. Like I could call it LaFlippadoo. I could say it's LaFlippadoo. And you would have to be like, well, yep, that's LaFlippadoo. It just would be definitionally true. And so it's like, that doesn't really serve a use here.